Now, Nigeria's economy grew by 1.87% in real terms in the first quarter of the year 2020. This represents a 0.23 percentage point drop year on year. When compared to the preceding quarter, Africa's largest economy shaved off 0.68 percentage points of economic growth. Kayode Akindele, a partner at TIA Capital, now joins me as we break down the first quarter GDP figures and, of course, talk capital importation reports from the National Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria. Kayode, a pleasure to have you join us on Power Lunch West Africa. So the Q1 GDP figures that we see in Nigeria, do the figures out match your expectations, and how much of this can we attribute to impact from the coronavirus?
Hi, Christy. The GDP number was actually higher than most analysts expected. The shame is obviously the COVID crisis started sailing in end of February and March, and that curtailed the GDP numbers. But I think GDP number would have been pretty strong without the COVID-19, which is encouraging to an extent for the Nigerian government at that point. I think the key thing to look on the GDP figures is that agriculture seems to have slowed down in its growth, which is a key focus for the government, and manufacturing as well has not grown as strongly as they would have wanted. But the fact that they had stable growth, given that probably half of the period was the COVID-19 crisis, I think they'll be pretty happy.
Now, Kayode, the Nigerian National Bureau of Statistics has attributed the sharp drop to oil, of course, is an issue. COVID-19 is an issue. The NBS also says restricted international trade is an issue, but clearly there's no mention of the impact of Nigeria's closed border as a factor to the latest GDP figures we are seeing. Now, talking about things that we can control and those we cannot. Oil, maybe we can't control. COVID-19, definitely out of our control. But how much of a front burner conversation can Nigeria's international and local trade strategy be at this time?
It's a very good question, because obviously, even what's happening globally and the disruption to global logistic chains and global trade, you have to have a clear trade policy going forward. And Nigeria started its policy of closing its land borders to try and curtail smuggling and encourage domestic manufacturing and production since August last year. And obviously, this is dovetailed into the COVID crisis, where a lot of other countries are closing their borders as well. So Nigeria right now is not out of the ordinary with other countries. Now, going forward, what do we do? And we're seeing a lot of talk, especially among even developed countries, about moving their logistical chains closer to home and not concentrating on places like China and the Far East, given what's happened right now, which is in line with what the Nigerian government is trying to do in terms of encouraging local manufacturing, so that you have reduced the import, especially where we have a comparative advantage. Now, what's the best way of doing that? And I think that's where a lot of the analysts differ from some of the government strategy, in the sense that closing the border the best way to do this, to encourage domestic manufacturing, if you haven't addressed things like power, which is probably the single biggest issue affecting domestic manufacturing.
Now, Kayode, the NBS also says that the latest figures that we see, talking about Nigeria's Q1’20 GDP, reflect what they call the earliest effects of disruptions, particularly when we talk about Nigeria's non-oil economy. Now, just how immune is Nigeria's non-oil sector is?
No, it's not. I mean, Nigeria's non-oil, the former non-oil economy is not immune to COVID-19. So we had shutdowns in various states, which has affected trade, which is a big aspect of non-oil economy. And onto those and that's going to have an effect there. I think in terms of the non-oil economy, what Nigeria needs to do and use this period is to try and bring the large informal sector into the formal sector. And we've seen that with some of the reforms that have been announced in terms of CAC reduction, NAFDAC saying it's going to be quicker to approve products that people are trying to bring to the market. We need to bring more of that informal economy into the formal economy, and it's a very good opportunity to do that. And if you do that, then you can try and grow those areas of the economy that are non-oil. Because if you look at GDP Q1 numbers, what the big reason for that growth was quite strong growth in the oil sector. Now, we're not going to see that in Q2, given what's happened with the oil market. And so we have to start trying to address that. And the amended budget will help with that. And even if you look at the Q1 revenue numbers, I think Nigeria was 48% of what the revenue target was, which is not good enough. And those are the kind of things the government needs to address.
And just very quickly, Kayode, we've fast run out of time. Help us understand the realities behind Nigeria's latest capital importation figures. Basically,
we need to encourage more FDI. It's all right having FDI, but we've seen during a crisis, FDI is hot money and it flows out of the country, which affects your FX reserves, which Nigeria is not trying to address. But we need to attract more FDI. LNG 27 is a very good start, and we need to attract more projects like that bring FDI for sustainable development.